So, I originally was going to say that there was going to be no spoilers at all in this video. However, due to the nature of the original game and what Rebirth covers of the original game, that might be kind of hard to say explicitly. So what I will say is that if you've played the original game, you're completely fine to watch this video. If you've never played the original game and you don't know what happens to certain characters, probably shouldn't watch the ending portions of this video, because we're going to be going over a few things, but won't be spoiling Rebirth at all, because I don't even know the spoilers. So, hope you enjoy. So the day has arrived. Review embargoes are over. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has gotten that sweet little Metacritic score that everybody waits for and everybody fights over, and no one really gives a shit about unless it fits their narrative. That being said, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has gotten an incredibly big response, and it has been rated a 93 must-play on Metacritic. Now this breaks the 90 mark for the first time in a while. I believe Endwalker was a 92, if I remember correctly. But this is pretty big for the Final Fantasy series. The last time we had a major Final Fantasy hit the 90s that wasn't in the MMO genre was Final Fantasy IX. So this is a very impressive debut for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's got like 118 reviews so far. Overly positive. There's nothing... I've not seen a single negative review of the game at all, which I think is very telling. There have been some negative things, which obviously it's not a perfect game, or it would be rated a 100. So it's going to have some flaws, which I predicted would be about the open world. And it seems like that's kind of the general consensus, that things in the open world are great, but if you're trying to be a completionist, it can get kind of grating. So we're going to go into that a little bit. But we're also going to go into the positives, the negatives, and just a little bit of everything in between. So don't worry, we're not going to be talking about spoilers like I said in the beginning of the video, but we will talk about the reviews and stuff like that. Generally, what I'm getting from these reviews is that character moments are great, they're very well done, they're very well written, the humor is on point, the locations are beautiful, awesome to explore. There's a lot to do in these places. There's mini games that everybody loves. Anyway, the open world is apparently really done well. There's things like towers that you do to unlock like pieces of the map. Not unlock them, but unlock things to do on the map or show them easier. This is something that you see in every open world game now. It seems like a lot of the things that Rebirth is doing come from the open world genre, and we kind of expected that. I've played the Junon demo, and what I played was really fun to explore and find items and things to do, world intel, and everything like that. So I would say probably the full game's gonna be even better than that. I've also seen that the progression system is nice. I've seen that, and obviously I've played the combat, so I absolutely love the combat. It is phenomenal. Between team attacks, synergy abilities, the blocking synergy ability where it's like you hold R1 to block, but you can use abilities using your teammates and stuff like that. The ability to swap your party pretty much on the fly unless you're in combat. Having a back row that's active in combat. Your characters actually follow you around on the map and aren't just relegated to being off screen somewhere. All these different systems interlock and they're really good. There's times, so there's a materia that you can get from Chadley, and it's fire and ice, and that actually gives you fire and ice spells, instead of just having to have one each individual spell attached to a materia. It's now wrapped into one. Now that's not all the time, this is just special ones that you get from Chadley, but it is a cool feature, and it upgrades together. So if you get Fyra, you also get Blizzara. And if you get Blizzaga, you get Firaga. So it's nice that you can get those materia where they kind of combine together and you don't have to waste a bunch of slots just to get a bunch of different spells. I think that's a really nice touch. The quality of life improvements, aerial combat's much better. I said in the last video that I hadn't really got a chance to work with aerial combat. I've played the Junon demo like 6 times. I love it. I think this might be the best combat system I've ever played, and that's saying something, because I've played a lot of different combat systems, a lot of action games, a lot of turn-based games. This might be the best system I've ever used. Some of the reviews did say that in the story department, things can get a little bit lost because of the open world and because of the way the story progresses, and that sometimes you get too distracted and there's long periods of time between like really important moments or set pieces or whatever. And I don't know if that's just like a minor complaint or if that's actually something to do with pacing issues. There were a few times where they mentioned pacing issues, but I don't know. It's something that obviously it's going to be a case-by-case basis and how you feel about pacing and how you feel about characters and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be that's obviously going to be subjective. I am concerned a little bit with the repetitive nature of some of the things that you do in the game. The world intel is nice, you get to fight different enemies and stuff like that, but I don't know how that's going to extrapolate over the course of an entire, what appears to be 70 to 100 hours to maybe even more if you're a completionist. I've read that completionists will tend to maybe get a little graded on the side quests and the whatever things there are to do. It might get a little repetitive and a little tedious. So I don't know. I think they sound great. I think honestly the reviews have all been super positive. I'm excited for the game because I'm excited to see these characters again and see some of the bigger set piece moments that they've hopefully kept intact. And just in general play the combat, because the combat itself is phenomenal and worth the price of admission. But the side quests I'm interested in because I want to see how they expand the world of Final Fantasy VII in a meaningful way. So I'm pretty excited for that. But let's get to the elephant in the room. Now, everybody's wondering about the ending. And again, I will not be spoiling the ending. I don't know the ending. I've not read any spoilers on the ending, so I don't really know what's going to happen. However, what I can go by is the reviewers that were actually willing to talk about the ending mostly don't have very nice things to say about it. There were some that were kind of middle of the road, like they want to see where it goes, but they felt like they had more questions than answers, which is pretty fitting considering Remake was the same way. Some have said that if you're a theory crafter, you're going to have a heyday with the ending of this game, which is kind of concerning. And the other thing is that apparently, this ending, much like Remake, is going to be divisive. There was a GameSpot reviewer, an editor, and she had this to say. You know, honestly, if you just chop off the final chapter of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's the greatest game I've ever played. Man, I just love it. I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth a week or so ago and haven't stopped thinking about it since. I absolutely adored every second of it with the exception of its final chapter, which I unfortunately did not vibe with at all. But that said, it's so worth playing, and what it does with its cast of beloved characters is simply incredible. So, you know, it's tough. And Timur Hussain from GameSpot also posted his review. They said the ending doesn't work and is a mess. There's one specific moment that has been the subject of will they, won't they speculation for years, and how it resolves manages to be confusing to the point of being incomprehensible. For the original Final Fantasy VII, it became an iconic moment crystallized in the minds of millions by its emotionally devastating impact, and for many, it changed the way they thought about video game characters. In Rebirth, it is bewildering and undermines multiple characters, diminishing and obfuscating qualities that define who they are, the decisions they make, and their motivations for doing so, while also being unclear about what is actually happening. Aerith in particular is robbed of a moment that is so crucial to her character by the messy delivery. The message is lost among narrative noise that wasn't there before, and it's so uncharacteristic of a game that otherwise is sharp in how it presents its characters. They do go on to say, though, that of course all of this is open to interpretation, and perhaps some will find meaning where I couldn't, but having to untangle a story in a desperate bid to make sense of it isn't what I wanted to be doing when the journey was complete. Now, that does not sound like a very glowing review of the ending, and by the time he got around to giving the score, the ending was what he did not enjoy. Now, I know what people are going to say, I'm harping on it, I'm whatever, but I want to jump over to IGN, which obviously I don't necessarily agree with 900% of the time. So they say, the concept of rebuilding Final Fantasy VII's story for a new generation came with the theme of defying your supposed fate, which was made explicit toward the end of Remake with a convergence of alternate timelines affecting each other. Subjectively, maybe. It took me a while to come around on this idea, and although the mechanisms that turn the wheels of fate in Rebirth are as obtuse as they've ever been, it's a direction I've wanted to embrace. But while this newish story has the potential to be equally as powerful as the original, it pains me to say that Rebirth fumbles the execution. Avoiding any spoilers, the events of its conclusion and the ensuing aftermath are portrayed in a way that is both convoluted and undefined, robbing it of its impact, in a case of trying to do too much without the connective tissue to bring it all together. Cryptic messages and nuanced meanings can be well and good, but sometimes stories also have to speak plainly about what is actually happening, and Rebirth does not when it needs to most. That being said, I'm going to go into this, like I said, with the mindset that I know this sounds weird, but they have to earn me back. And I know they don't owe me anything, and I'm not going into this thinking they do. My mindset has to be that, because when this all ended with Remake, I was in a bad place. I'd played the game before anybody else, well, besides the reviewers, of course. I'd played the game before anybody else. I had to sit on this information for a long time, and when I thought I would be probably in the majority, it turned out I was actually in the minority of people on this game. And it didn't go very well for me. So I'm going into this with the lowest expectations I can possibly have. And if they blow me away somehow, great. And if not, well, I know what to expect. So I'm not going to sit here and agree with the reviews or whatever, because I honestly don't know. I haven't played it. But if it's anything like Remake's ending, it's probably going to end up in the same way for me. But I'm willing to give it a shot, and I'm willing to see what it does, and I'm excited to play for just the gameplay alone. So we will see what happens. I'm excited for the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth team. I think it's absolutely amazing that they have come out with a game that's rated 93 on Metacritic and is a must-play. Absolutely super happy for everybody that works at Square Enix on this game, and I hope that you guys continued this long success. I really do. So without further ado, I'm on to the next mission. Later, guys.